At 6, July is set to be the hottest month ever recorded around the world. As fires burn in the extreme heat waves, the head of the United Nations says humanity has unleashed destruction. July is set to be the hottest month ever recorded in the world. The head of the United Nations says the era of global warming is over and global boiling has begun. And President Biden called climate change an existential threat. The temperature records date back to the 1940s, but some experts believe this month has been the hottest globally for 120,000 years, and they link it directly to burning fossil fuels. Here's our climate editor, Justin Rolat.
July isn't over yet, but it is already virtually certain to be the hottest month ever recorded on Earth, say a number of teams of climate scientists around the world. The head of the UN announced the era of global boiling has begun, but do not despair, he says.
The evidence is everywhere. Humanity has unleashed destruction. This must not inspire despair, but action. We can still stop the worst, but to do so, we must turn a year of burning heat into a year of burning ambition and accelerate climate action now.
Here in the UK, the Met Office has said last year's record-breaking temperatures were a taste of things to come. If carbon emissions continue as expected, by 2060, an average July in the UK will be as hot as 2022.
Month after month, these records are being broken. We're seeing extreme weather events around the world, whether they're heat events, wildfires, droughts, even flooding events linked with climate change as well. And we're going to see more of those, much more frequently, more intense, more prolonged as our climate continues to change.
Let's take a look at just how exceptional temperatures have been. The grey lines here show average day-to-day temperatures since 1940. And let's now add in this year and look how it peaks on July the 6th. That was the hottest day ever recorded, with an average global temperature of 17.18 degrees Celsius. And if you're thinking that sounds a little bit low, it's because it is global. It includes everywhere from the Arctic to the Antarctic, and day and night. And now look how July continues to be exceptionally hot. This graph gives us all the Julys since 1880, when the Industrial Revolution and carbon emissions really started to take off. And look how the temperature has steadily risen to where we are now. This, of course, is how the weather looked for most of us here in the UK this July, even if there was record heat elsewhere. It was a very different story last year, though, with that record-breaking heat wave. 57 weather stations across the country recorded all-time high temperatures. Look how widespread they are. There were records broken in all the nations of the UK. So is the UK ready for the extremes climate change will bring?
I've got some fresh water here for you.
Oh, thank you.
Residents at this care home in Bristol really suffered in the heat last year. The manager plans to make big changes to protect them in the future.
We're diverting funds that we could use somewhere else just to invest in making our buildings and all our services cope with the increased changes in the climate.
We all need to adapt to be ready for the hotter world that's coming. But to stop climate change, we need to cut carbon emissions, and quickly. Justin Rolat, BBC News.
So what role can technology play in slowing climate change? Well, Silicon Valley companies are investing in carbon capture technology that removes carbon from the air. Here, the government is also keen to promote the large-scale planting of trees, which help soak up carbon as they grow. Our environment correspondent, Matt McGrath, has been looking at the potential solutions.
In a railway arch in East London, a small company is tackling the root cause of climate change. Mission Zero have developed what they say is a better, more cost-effective way of extracting carbon dioxide from thin air. And they want to share their development with the world.
We want to realise this capability all over the world, where essentially we can produce units anywhere because we have off-the-shelf units that we're using, and we can deploy them anywhere. And so from our perspective, that means you have the highest opportunity to actually remove the most amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
This startup is one of a handful benefiting financially from some of the richest companies in Silicon Valley. This coalition of the wealthy is called Frontier. They're putting up $1 billion to encourage new technologies to remove and permanently store climate-warming gases.
What we're trying to do at Frontier is be an early buyer for those solutions so that they can attract that talent, get that investment, and ultimately scale up their solutions. It's a number of corporate buyers that are effectively paying these companies to remove a ton of CO2 from the atmosphere, from the ocean, and store that permanently.
There are already long-standing plans to use nature to remove carbon. The UK government and others around the world are encouraging the widespread planting of trees. But here in West Wales, the prospect of making money by storing carbon in trees has seen an influx of speculators keen to buy farmland that can be turned into forests. Hefin Jones farms cattle near Carmarthen, but he's got serious concerns about trying to remove CO2 with large-scale tree planting.
When you look at mass afforestation, you're looking at the removal of food production, and the great fear is that in the context that we're looking at, it's all for the purpose of carbon offset. It would effectively turn parts of Wales into a carbon dumping ground so that other sectors could carry on business as usual, it seems.
As well as the impact on farming, there are growing concerns that relying on trees to draw down carbon from the atmosphere over the next 100 years is a flawed concept. Scientists argue that we need to be removing that carbon right now, not in a century's time.
Technology is not a silver bullet for the climate crisis, but it does offer significant hope. Supporters believe that with the right investment, it can limit or even reverse emissions of warming gases. The carbon-sucking machines are here to stay. Matt McGrath, BBC News.